Okay, rule number 2. Sorry, I lost my rule number 1 for some reason. But the second rule here is that the first element only gets a prefix if there's more than 1. Okay? So the first element listed only gets a prefix if there is more than 1. So that means in carbon dioxide, we don't call it monocarbon dioxide, right? Mono means 1, but we don't include that prefix unless there is more than 1. Okay, so this is still just carbon dioxide. Okay? Rule number 3. The second element, so now we're looking at the second element that's listed. This is what the second element will look like. It has a prefix like mono, di, tri, etc., those ones that you just wrote down. Then it's the root of the element, like oxygen, like ox for oxygen, and then it ends in IDE. Okay, so if we had something that said trioxide, that means we would be looking at O3, right? We have tri, which means 3. Oxygen is our root, and it ends in IDE. Here that this second element always gets a prefix. So even if there's only 1, that means it gets the prefix mono. Okay? The first element only gets a prefix if there's more than 1. So, but the second element always gets a prefix no matter what. All right, and our last rule here is kind of just a grammatical rule, I guess. But when we have an element that begins with a vowel, so we're going to drop the O or the A in our prefix if we have an element that it starts with a vowel. Okay, so let me write that out and then we'll look at some examples here. So we're going to drop the O or A on a prefix when the element starts with a vowel. So for example, if we were looking at monoxide, we don't call it monooxide, right? We drop this O here and we call it monoxide. Okay? Same if we were looking at pentaoxide, we drop that A and we're left with pentoxide. Okay, so we only drop that last vowel if our element begins with a vowel. And that's just kind of a speaking or a grammatical rule, but that's what we have to follow. Okay, what would pentoxide look like? O what? How many of those would we have? O5, right? That's our prefix. So those prefixes you need to start getting familiar with, need to start memorizing. It's going to make your naming process a lot quicker. This naming system is very simple. You just simply name exactly what you see. There's no worrying about charges, no worrying about neutral or anything like that. You're going to name exactly what you see. These compounds do not get reduced. Okay, so if you see a compound that looks like this, C2O2, it does not get reduced to CO. Okay, covalent compounds come exactly as they are. Okay, so if we were going to name this compound C2O2, I would call it dicarbon dioxide. Carbon gets a prefix because there is more than one of them. Oxygen always gets a prefix because it's the second element. And we have 2 and 2. Dicarbon dioxide. That's it. Okay. Any questions? Let's name a few more. So I want you to give me the name of this molecule. I'm going to give you a few here to practice on your own. Okay, let's try those 3. Okay, so I'm glad we asked that question, but our first element here, although it's an anion, still keeps its regular name. It does not end in IDE. Only the second element ends in IDE. So can someone give me a name for this first element, or this first covalent compound? Amanda, what do you think? Sulfur. What's the rest of it called? Trioxide. Good. Sulfur trioxide. Did anyone notice that SO3 looks like your polyatomic ion? Why is this different than sulfite? It doesn't have a charge. Very good. Okay? So even though SO3 is the makeup of sulfite, this does not have a charge, which means we don't name it sulfite. Sulfite is exclusively compounds that are SO3 and they're charged -2. Okay? All right, what about our second one? Jake, what'd you have? Iodine trichloride. Perfect. Okay, and our last one. Alexis, what'd you have?
Phosphorus pentabromide.
Perfect. Pentabromide. Okay, so I'm going to give you the name, you give me the formula now. Do we need our periodic table of ions for naming covalent compounds? Not really. Not really. Okay? Because we're going to name them exactly as they're given. Okay? So, Kelly, can you give me the first one? C what for?
O4.
O for iodide?
Oh.
That's okay. Yep, there we go. CI4. Okay, be careful that you don't write it like this, CI4, right? Because that looks like CL4. I's need to have those crosses. Okay, so CI4, very good. Robbie, what about the second one?
ICL3.
What was the first letter?
Oh wait, which one are we on?
Yep.
It was bromine. PCl3.
PCl3, perfect.
Something else.
That's okay. PCl3, very good. And Keegan, what about the last one? N2O3. Perfect. Okay. Dinitrogen, the di tells us that there's 2 nitrogen atoms. Tri tells us there's 3 oxygen atoms. Okay.